Emma had been deaf since birth, lived entirely in silence, communicated through American Sign Language. When she got separated from her hiking group and became hopelessly lost, her first thought was, "How will anyone understand me?" The old man who found her didn't know sign language. He spoke words Emma couldn't hear, looked confused when she signed back. They were trapped in mutual incomprehension despite both desperately wanting to communicate. Emma pulled out her emergency notebook, always carried specifically for situations like this, and wrote, "I'm deaf. Do you know ASL?" The man, weathered and elderly, read the note and shook his head. He wrote, "No, but I can learn. You teach me your language, I'll teach you survival. Deal?" And so began the strangest education either had experienced, a deaf 16-year-old teaching sign language to a 70-year-old tracker while he taught her to read wilderness in ways that transcended words. Emma Fischer, 16, had been hiking with her school group when she stopped to photograph wildflowers. Just for a moment, she thought. The group was moving slowly. She could catch up easily, but when she looked up from her camera, the trail was empty. The group had moved ahead, turned a corner, disappeared from view. Emma hurried after them, but at the next junction couldn't tell which path they'd taken. She tried calling out, then remembered. Pointless. She was profoundly deaf, born without hearing, lived entirely in silence. Her voice couldn't project properly, and even if it could, she wouldn't hear any response. Emma pulled out her phone. No signal. Of course, they were deep in wilderness, miles from cell towers. She tried following the most used trail, reasoning her group would stick to obvious paths. But after an hour of walking, nothing looked familiar. The sun was lowering. Emma's initial confidence crumbled into real fear. She'd been lost for 3 days when Jack Thornton found her. Jack was 72, had been tracking and guiding in these mountains for 40 years. He noticed Emma from a distance, moving erratically, clearly disoriented, checking her phone repeatedly like it might magically gain signal. "Hey!" Jack called, approaching carefully so he wouldn't startle her. Emma didn't respond, didn't even turn around. Jack got closer, tried again. "Miss, you okay?" Still no response. Emma was focused on her phone, willing it to work. Jack touched her shoulder gently. Emma spun around, startled, eyes wide with fear that quickly shifted to relief at seeing another person. She began signing immediately, rapid, complex hand movements that Jack couldn't begin to interpret. Her face showed frustration as Jack stared blankly. "I don't understand," Jack said, then realized she probably couldn't hear him. Emma's hands moved more frantically, signing the same phrases repeatedly. Jack could see intelligence in her eyes, desperation to communicate, but had no way to access it. Finally, Emma grabbed her emergency notebook, always carried specifically for situations like this, and wrote quickly, "I'm deaf. I've been lost for 3 days. Do you know ASL?" Jack read the note, understanding clicking into place. He pulled out his own small notebook and wrote, "I don't know sign language, but I can help. My cabin is close. We'll get you safe, then figure out rescue." Emma read the note, relief washing over her features. She nodded vigorously and wrote, "Thank you." They walked to Jack's cabin in silence. Emma because she couldn't hear. Jack because he had no way to communicate beyond occasional reassuring gestures. The cabin was small but well-maintained, clearly the home of someone who lived alone and liked it that way. Jack settled Emma by the fireplace, prepared food and hot tea, then pulled out paper to write. "You're safe now. I'll contact rangers tomorrow. I have a radio. They'll organize rescue. For tonight, rest." Emma wrote back, "Thank you for helping me. Most people don't know how to communicate with deaf people. They panic or give up." Jack wrote, "I've spent 40 years reading signs, animal tracks, weather patterns, terrain. Your signs are just a different system. If you're willing to teach me, I'm willing to learn." Emma looked at this elderly man offering to learn an entire language just to communicate with her. She wrote, "Really? Most people won't bother. They just write everything or avoid me." "We're stuck together until rescue," Jack wrote. "Might as well learn to actually talk instead of just passing notes. You teach me your language. I'll teach you survival skills. Fair trade?" Emma smiled, her first real smile in 3 days. She wrote, "Deal." The lessons started immediately. Emma began with the basics, the manual alphabet, fingerspelling, simple survival-related signs. She demonstrated each sign slowly, had Jack imitate, corrected his hand position gently. Jack proved a surprisingly quick student. He'd spent decades reading subtle signs in wilderness, a bent twig indicating an animal passed, slight discoloration of leaves suggesting water nearby, cloud patterns predicting weather. Reading Emma's hands was similar, attention to detail, recognizing patterns, understanding that small movements carried meaning. By the end of the first day, Jack could sign basic concepts: food, water, shelter, danger, yes, no thank you. Simple but functional. Emma taught systematically. First, signs directly relevant to their situation, wilderness survival vocabulary. Then, expanding to more complex concepts. Jack took notes, practiced constantly, asked questions through writing that Emma answered. Why does the sign for mountain look like that? Jack wrote, imitating the sign, hands forming peaks. Emma wrote back, ASL is often iconic. Signs look like what they represent. Mountain looks like peaks. Tree looks like a trunk and branches. It's logical once you understand the system. Jack found this fascinating. He'd always thought language was arbitrary sounds assigned to concepts, but sign language was visual, often showing the concept rather than just labeling it. In exchange, Jack taught Emma wilderness skills that didn't require hearing: how to read weather from cloud formations and wind patterns, how to identify edible plants versus poisonous lookalikes, how to navigate by sun position and terrain features. Emma had always thought her deafness meant wilderness was dangerous. She couldn't hear approaching animals, warning shouts, storm sounds, but Jack showed her that sight, smell, and touch provided plenty of information if you learned to pay attention. Most hearing people don't actually listen to the forest, Jack wrote. They hear sounds but don't interpret them. You might not hear, but you observe better than most people I've guided. You notice visual details they miss. By the third day, they developed functional communication. Emma could explain complex ideas through signing. Jack could understand and respond. Not perfectly. He still missed signs, needed clarification, occasionally confused similar handshapes, but they were genuinely communicating. Jack contacted rangers on his radio, explained the situation. Emma was safe, uninjured. Rescue could wait for better weather conditions. No immediate emergency. Might be 5 or 6 days before they reach us. Jack wrote to Emma, storm coming. They'll wait it out. You okay staying here? Emma wrote, yes, I like it here. And you're teaching me things my school never could, real survival skills, and you're learning ASL better than some people who've studied for years. You actually care about communicating properly, not just getting by. That evening, as they prepared dinner, Emma taught Jack the sign for friend, 2 index fingers hooking together, then reversing position. Jack practiced it, then signed it to Emma deliberately. Friend, he signed, then wrote, that's what we are now. Thank you for teaching me to talk properly instead of just writing everything. Emma signed back. Thank you for wanting to learn. Most people give up. They talk louder like that helps, or they just avoid me completely. You committed to actual communication. Over the following days, their language deepened. Jack learned to sign full sentences, to express complex thoughts about tracking and survival. Emma learned to read wilderness signs that had nothing to do with hearing: animal tracks, scat composition, plant health indicators. They talked about their lives. Emma explained what it was like growing up deaf, attending a school for the deaf, communicating in a language most of the world didn't understand. Do you wish you could hear? Jack signed one evening, his movements now much more confident. Emma considered her response carefully, then signed. I used to wish that when I was younger, but now, no. I don't know what I'm missing, so I don't miss it. My world is different, not less. I experience things hearing people miss. Visual details, vibrations, seeing language in space instead of hearing it in time. It's just different. Jack nodded understanding, then signed. Like how I experience mountains differently than tourists. They see scenery. I see ecosystem patterns, stories written in terrain. Same place, different perception. Exactly, Emma signed. Different doesn't mean worse, just different. Jack shared his own story. 40 years in these mountains, mostly alone, preferring animal company to human. He'd been married once, long ago, but his wife couldn't handle the isolation. She'd left after 5 years, moved back to civilization. Jack had stayed, choosing mountains over marriage. Do you get lonely? Emma signed. Sometimes, Jack signed back, but solitude is different from loneliness. I chose this life, and the mountains are company if you learn their language. Like I learned ASL, Emma signed. and you're learning it now. Yes, everything has its own language. Learning to read it is how you understand anything deeply. On the 5th day, the storm cleared. Rangers radioed they'd arrive tomorrow for extraction. Emma felt conflicted. She wanted to go home, see her family, but also felt she'd found something rare here. Someone who'd committed to genuine communication, who saw her deafness not as disability, but as different way of experiencing the world. I'll miss this. Emma signed that evening, actually communicating with someone who learned my language instead of forcing me to adapt entirely to theirs. I'll miss having a reason to use ASL, Jack signed. Though I'll keep practicing. Maybe help with search and rescue situations involving deaf hikers. Could be useful. You should, Emma signed enthusiastically. There aren't enough people who know both wilderness survival and sign language. You could bridge that gap. The next morning, Rangers arrived. Emma's parents were with them, having flown out when they heard she'd been found. They rushed to Emma, signing frantically. Her mother in fluent ASL, her father in simplified signs he'd learned late in life. I was so scared, her mother signed. 3 days lost. Anything could have happened. I was safe, Emma signed back. Jack took care of me, and he learned ASL so we could communicate properly. Her parents turned to Jack, surprised. Most hearing people didn't bother learning ASL, even when it would be helpful. Thank you, Emma's father said aloud while signing. For keeping our daughter safe. Jack signed back, his movements still careful but clearly competent. She taught me as much as I taught her. Fair exchange. Emma's mother's eyes widened. You learned ASL in 5 days? Basics, Jack signed modestly. Enough to communicate. Emma is a good teacher. Before leaving, Emma wrote in Jack's notebook, "Thank you for seeing me as a person who communicates differently, not as someone with a disability. Thank you for learning my language instead of just managing. Thank you for showing me wilderness can belong to deaf people too." Jack wrote back, "Thank you for teaching me that language isn't just words, that communication is deeper than sound, that paying attention matters more than hearing." They stayed in touch. Emma visited Jack's cabin the next summer, bringing friends from her deaf school. Jack taught them all wilderness survival, conducting entire lessons in ASL he'd continued practicing. "You're the only hearing guide who teaches in sign language," one of Emma's friends signed to Jack. "That means deaf people can actually learn from you directly, not through interpreters. That's rare. That matters." Jack just shrugged. Language is language. I learned to read animal tracks, bird behavior, weather patterns. Learning ASL wasn't different, just another system to understand. And understanding is what tracking is about. Years later, Emma wrote her college thesis on accessibility in wilderness education. She featured Jack prominently, the 72-year-old tracker who'd learned sign language in 5 days because he believed communication mattered more than convenience. "Most people won't learn ASL," Emma wrote. "They say it's too hard, takes too long, isn't worth the effort." But Jack Thornton learned functional sign language in less than a week because he believed I deserved to be communicated with properly, not just accommodated. That's the difference between accessibility and inclusion. Accessibility is writing notes. Inclusion is learning someone's language. Jack received a copy of the thesis, read it with quiet pride. He'd never thought teaching himself ASL was particularly remarkable, just seemed like the right thing to do when stuck with someone who communicated differently. But Emma was right. Most people wouldn't bother. They'd write notes, find workarounds, manage without real communication. Jack had chosen differently, had decided that if they were going to spend days together, they should actually talk, not just exchange written messages. That choice had changed both of them. Emma learned wilderness belonged to deaf people as much as hearing ones. Jack learned that language existed beyond sound, that communication transcended hearing, that understanding someone meant meeting them in their world rather than forcing them into yours. Two people trapped by circumstance, separated by different ways of experiencing the world, who chose to bridge that gap. A deaf 16-year-old and a 72-year-old tracker teaching each other languages, one visual, one written in wilderness itself, both equally valid, both worth learning, both expanding what it meant to understand.